It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. Take a look in the 5 and 10,
glistening once again,
with candy canes and silver lanes aglow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
Great. Hi everyone, my name's Christina, and as you can see by the title, I'm going to take a slightly different tangent here and start talking a little bit about testing. So before I do, just a little bit of information about myself. So I work for a mobile app development company. I have been a tester, and now I'm a QA manager I've been a tester for about 6 years and a QA manager for about a year. I don't actually look at myself as a QA manager. I look at myself as more of an agile coach, but a disciplined area in testing. And I absolutely love Scrum, and I love everything about it. I think it's brilliant, it works, and I think agile methodologies and frameworks are definitely the way to go, and I don't think I could ever look back and work in a waterfall company. So a bit of a story as to what this talk is about. About a year ago, I was working with one of my developers, and I asked him to invite me to an engineering meeting. And he turned around to me and said, "You don't need to be in there. What do you need to know about development?" And that kind of hit a slight nerve. And I basically, and this was all through email, and I said to him, I said, "Well, don't you think that I should be involved in, talking about what we're going to be developing, or thinking about all the stories we're going to be looking at from a testing perspective?" He said, well, not really. I mean, what value could you add? And I said, well, I could question things. I could actually think about, what ways I could potentially break the system, or look at the story, or, we could actually pair and collaborate and think about how we can make things better from a quality perspective. And it got him thinking. So I basically thought to myself, people don't really think or understand the value of bringing testing to the front of the actual process or the cycle, or don't really consider testers as part of the whole holistic team. So basically, pretty much a bog standard scenario. You've got this kind of scenario where you think everyone knows what they're actually building, but they don't really understand what they're building. So again, this got me thinking, well, how can I help in this situation? And normally, if you can see here, if there's an I, most people just think about what they know in terms of the story or the acceptance criteria. Yeah, I know what I'm building. But in actual fact, this can cause a massive problem. And really, we want to get to a point where we all have a collective, collaborative understanding of what it is we're trying to build. So really, it's all about understanding to be able to define what we're building. Most places that I've worked, or most teams that I've worked with, don't really have a good understanding of what is the goal that we're trying to achieve. Most people just start coding, start developing, and actually, when they get to the end of the process, realize that they've either built the wrong thing, or there's a lot of bugs, and it can cause a lot of difficulties or a lot of problems. So a lot of places think 50 bugs is a good thing. I look at 50 bugs and I think that's a bad thing, because surely somewhere in the process you're going wrong. There must be something that you could do to avoid 50 bugs and actually maybe bring that down to 5. So this was really bothering me. And one of the things that I remember someone saying to me is, yeah, if you have more bugs, surely you're doing the right thing. And every single tester, almost, that I've interviewed says, my job is to chase bugs, or my job is to raise bugs and raise defects. And I put my head in my hands and I think, God, no, that's not what it's about. You're much better than that. There's more to you. You can bring so much value to a Scrum team or any kind of team. So chasing and managing bugs isn't what we should be defining as technically excellent, or we should be defining as, measures of quality. And apparently that's all testers do, because many people have this stigma attached to testers are only there to do this job. But really it's about building the right thing. And I've been thinking very recently about what does quality mean. And quality has so many different standards for different people. My perception of quality could be very different to another person's perception of quality. So really, it's about understanding what we're building for the customer, whether it's 1 user, 10 users, 50 users, or a whole, public sector. It's really understanding what are we trying to achieve. So that's great. I thought to myself, that's brilliant. But still, a lot of places are getting it wrong. A lot of people have assumptions. They're building circles to fit into a square box. And I think to myself, why is this still happening? And over the last 6 years, I kind of found that it was very much because people aren't having conversations, people aren't talking. It's still a siloed mentality. People are just sitting in their seats, coding away or writing test scripts, and they're not really thinking about the conversations that should be taking place prior to building any piece of software or whatever it may be. So conversations matter. It's such an important aspect to any kind of team. And essentially, it avoids waste. And quite recently, I brought this topic up in the office. We started talking about waste and what it actually meant. And a lot of people didn't really understand that if you don't have conversations, you could be building the wrong thing, and that's no use to the user, no use to anyone. So it's actually waste. It's not valuable. There's no return on investment. There's nothing that benefits the company or the user. So really, really, we need to think about what it is we're building. So test first, code later is basically the concept that I'm bringing to the table. And really, it's about 4 potential ideas here. It's about conversing. It's about thinking about things like scenarios, writing things down. If your company is practicing behavior-driven development, using scenarios as a way to actually eliminate bugs and find out what ways we can test the actual software before we start building it. Sketching different prototypes. It could be that if you have a designer involved in the team, how can you sketch things? How can you potentially have printouts and put them on the walls and start, annotating them and really, really exercising the idea of what you are about to build. Conditions of satisfaction or acceptance criteria is another really great way of thinking about testing first. And that's not to say that we can't build prototypes, but if we're going to build prototypes, be very careful about not ending up actually building the software or building the system. It's very important that we think that this is something that we're looking at, that we need to test rather than start building upon, because there's a lot of assumptions and things could change. So just a few ideas on how can you get there. So if this is something that could help you, or if this is something that you think, yeah, we need to get testers more involved, well, it's about inspecting and adapting. There's certainly no silver bullet, and it's very important that when you're changing a mindset or changing the way a team or a company works, we need to think and look at as to how are we working now and how can we change. There's got to be team commitment because in particular where I am, one of the big difficulties or the challenges that we're trying to face right now is really getting the team involved to understand what is testing, what do we actually mean, what does a tester do, or what value does it bring to the team. But the team has to have that commitment to be able to potentially fail it once, try it again, but really think about how they can test first and then start building their system. And it's got to be continuous. So without teams actually trying to make it better over and over again, which is, inspecting and adapting, and one of the sort of the biggest principles, biggest values is, we need to think about how are you going to actually take what you've learned, how are you going to adapt it and change it and make it even better, but the team needs to be involved. It can't be just a tester and a developer pairing away and doing an awesome job, but the product owner not having any idea of what's going on. And that will eventually lead to a culture shift, and that's kind of one of the big things that we're trying to achieve where I am. We started very waterfall when the company first started, which was about 5 years ago, and now they're moving into agile methodologies, agile frameworks, and really trying to get this cultural shift, which is very difficult, but this from my perspective, when it comes to building great products, in particular in the mobile space, which is still a big unknown, is a massive key element to trying to achieve great quality products. And then you start asking yourself the question, are we building the right thing instead of have we built the right thing? Because if you get to the end and you build the wrong thing, it's waste, there's no use for anyone, and then basically have to go back in time and change it all over again. And that leads to loads of bugs, loads of regression testing, and basically extended deadlines. So really, you want to be thinking about this at the beginning. So the other element is technology is changing every day. One of the biggest challenges that we have is again, in the mobile space, things change so incredibly quickly that once you come to start building something, it's already changed. So really, you need to be thinking about how you're adapting your testing, how you're thinking about things first before you start building it, because it could eventually lead to a lot of waste and a lot of time and a lot of cost. And this, for me, really, nothing matters if you don't know what you're building. It really doesn't make a difference if you start building something and 2 weeks down the line, if it's not useful, it's not useful. And I think this is a really important factor because still there's a lot of teams where I work, and there's a lot of teams that I've experienced that still don't understand the point of you know, if you don't build the right thing for your customers, then they're not gonna value it. And this biggest thing here is tools won't save you. I hear a lot of people say, well, you can automate everything. You can, you know, use tools. Absolutely, you can, but it's not the silver bullet. You can't automate everything, because if you're still not having the conversation about what you need to build, automation tools or anything that you use within the work environment is not going to be useful to you. It might make things faster, but it's still not going to be helping you build the right thing. So conversations are key. Very important that everyone collaborates, everyone communicates. God, I'm good. And test first, code later. Brilliant. That's it.
The carol that you sing right within your